you ever been headlong in your career, passionate about what you do, fulfilled in every area, yet you still had an itch? You knew that there was just something more that you were called to do. Maybe you were flatlined, you'd accomplished all your goals and you were just there. I am so excited to have my guest today, Dr. Danielle McGeough. Yes, she is a PhD. She's a professor at UNI in communications and media. But in my world, she's a bright light and in many worlds. And here's the great thing. Last year, we did a You Are More event, and I met her at that event. And you've been a world changer for me. And so this next year, we're doing a Thrive event, guys. Thrive in 25. It's a Women's Day, full day event, January 11th. Mark your calendar. But she is going to be on our Action Takers panel. And so I wanted to give you just like a little taste of the experience you're going to have when you get to talk with her because she's amazing. But I take you back to last year when I met her. I had a quick phone call with her, and she's got a magnetic personality. And the funny thing of it is, Danielle, is that you've kind of started to invade my world. And what I say by my world is like there's multiple connecting pieces now with multiple different people that you're working with, that I'm working with. And I'm like, oh yeah. When they say Danielle, I'm like, oh yeah, Danielle. Like, and I didn't even know her before this, really. I mean, I think that we had worked with you as a client, but I had no clue what you were and who you were. And so it's been my great honor to have you today. Guys, I'm telling you, you're going to be inspired. She's the tactical, practical one, and she can give you, she's got a great podcast, Plan, Goal, Plan. It's a top one. Is it top 1.5% or 2%?
Top 2%.
Top 2% podcast. She's a podcast coach. She's a business personal development coach. And she's got a great business that some would think, man, you got a good side hustle. Well, her side hustle is blowing up. So welcome, Danielle.
Thank you so much for having me. I've enjoyed invading your world. You have good people.
I do have really good people.
You have great people. So I think it's just fun I feed off of your energy and get to make all the connections with the people that you work with. Yeah, it's been a blast.
Yeah, it's good. So tell me, give me a little backdrop too. She launched a podcast, what, 2 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
2 years ago, she launched a podcast, and literally to be top 2% podcast. And you started off doing 2 episodes a week, correct?
Yep, I still am.
Okay, she's doing 2 episodes a week. Guys, that takes a lot. It takes a lot. Doing 2 episodes a week. Plus, she's a professor. She's a mom of 2 amazing, active elementary student kids, and now 2 puppies. I mean, you have the fullest of full lives.
Yes, I do have a full life.
But tell me where you started back. Take me back to, maybe 3 years ago or where you were at.
I never would have dreamed that I would be podcasting or that I would have a business. Like, I am a teacher. I'm a professor. I love to learn things. I geek out about them, and then I want to share them with other people.
Yeah.
Now, I have been told that I talk a lot kind of my whole life. So maybe it's not that surprising that I have a podcast. But, for me, I was just going through a period of time that was really hard right after I had my kiddos. And I'm sure that you can relate to that. Anyone that's become like a new parent, it's like, whoa, and kind of like you, I had my kids a little bit later in life. My husband and I had been married for 10 years before we had our first kiddo. At that same time, I had earned tenure. So this goal that I had been working on my entire adult life, and it was a tough one, right? Like getting a PhD is a slog and it's hard. And then after that, you have to go on the job market. And then once you get the job, then you have to earn tenure. And I finally did it. And I was like, meh.
Yeah.
Like I just kind of felt flat and I had no idea what was next. I was trying to figure out who I was given my new role as a parent too. And what does that look like? How does that meld with my professional life? And I just felt really lost. And so I really had turned to mindful planning and holistic goal setting as a way to help me just reconnect with myself, figure out who I was. And I've been teaching things like performing identity and storytelling and identity and, you know, performance and social change. So I've been exploring this intersection of personal and social transformation professionally for a while. But planning and goal setting became these really practical, tactical tools.
Let's backtrack.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what it means to holistically plan goals.
So I think that sometimes when we think about goals, we immediately go, or at least I did, immediately go to my work goals.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't thinking about my personal goals quite the same way. So, yes, maybe at the start of a new year, I might think, oh, I should probably start exercising or I want to eat healthier or something like that. But I wasn't like, oh, I should set a goal to go on one-on-one dates with my kids once a month. Or I should set a goal to see if we can go down the water slide this many times this summer at the water park. Or actually, I think we set a goal to go around the lazy river 65 times. We blew that out of the water. We went like 90 sometimes. So, like I hadn't thought about having playful goals, fun
Yeah.
goals. I hadn't necessarily thought about my relationships as goals that kind of felt like icky to me at first. And yet, what I started to realize is that the goals just gave me a direction. They were direction setters and they helped me be more intentional and thoughtful. And so the goals weren't necessarily about the achievement, but about the way that it changed my relationship to those things. Because I got to take those things seriously, I got to
Mhm.
prioritize those things and I got to think about them in just a whole different way. So to me, holistic goal setting is recognizing that we can set goals in all different areas of our life and that they can be fun and they can be playful and not necessarily always just about success and achievement.
Yeah, I like that. That's a weak spot for me
How so? Tell me.
because, I'm such a, I get so locked into this is what I want to accomplish. This is what I want to do. My week challenge is being like playing.
Which is funny because you have a playful personality.
I know, but I don't play very well.
Yeah. Well, you should.
I know,
Do
like
you need to go down a water
I
slide?
think I need to go down a water slide. Sometimes I'll just do stuff like that, like with my kiddos, and they're like, "Mom," like I'll go do that stuff, but like setting it intentionally, like this week we're gonna go celebrate their 10th birthday. I can't believe my twins are 10, but and we're going to Disney, and I don't even like rides. Okay, I really don't, but I will go on all the rides with them, and it'll be the best day ever, right? And it'll be so
Absolutely.
much fun. Whether I like rides or not, I go jump on 'em. But there are some people that, like, really, really love going on rides. I don't. So I just have to do the thing to see the joy in my kids and to have something to bond with them about, right? Or let's say playing games. I did not even know I was not a game player until my kids got to the age, like, "You play games." And I'm like, "Huh?"
We've got to do
I'm
that.
like, "You gotta play games?" And my husband, he was raised his parents played cards, all that kinda stuff. We worked. My parents we worked. Everything we did revolved around work, and they made it fun.
So it's so interesting because I'm terrified of rides. I can actually do spinny rides, but I can't do droppy rides.
Okay.
And my son loves roller coasters, and my daughter is a daredevil. Like the moment that she's tall enough, we're going to be doing all of the things.
Yeah.
And I just, in my head, I have to go, Danielle,
Yeah.
this is an opportunity to practice courage.
Yeah, there you
And
go.
so, like, I'm literally like going down the howling tornado, and in my head, I'm like going, one, I might die, I might die. And then two, I'm like, this is building strength for something that I'm gonna be challenged with. And it's really terrifying for me, but I do have a lot of fun with it. I hate games too. My husband is a big board game person. I am not. And, I'm definitely the humbug around that. But I love like making messes and crafts and things
Yeah,
like that with my kids. And so I do think that different things are play for different people and figuring out what is your play. But sometimes you play in ways that you don't really like to because you love the people you're playing with.
right, right. Yeah, this last year we're trying to find and I don't wanna digress from our topic, but I was trying to find, like, ways, like, even, like, playing golf. Like, okay, we'll bring our family into golf. So I'm thankful because my son, he's got all these boys around him that they're always hopping on the course, right? And my daughter, I just wanted her to be a good golfer because I loved golf when I was growing up, and I played in high school and a very, very little bit in college. Um, but honestly, I was like, "Oh, we had fun doing it."
Hmm.
And I was like, "Oh, it's my wheelhouse."
Yeah.
Right? So I was like, "Okay, all right, we can do that." But anyway, going back to you. Tell me this. So you're in your career, you've got tenure, you've got, a new son, a new
Mhm.
baby. I always say that like when our kids came into our life, it was like a Mack truck hit our life in the best possible way,
Yes.
right? Like, whoa,
And we're off.
and we're off, and I don't know what we're doing, but we're gonna do it. And, I mean, I had twins, now you have twin puppies.
Yes,
You're
yes.
kind of getting the same vibe. No.
They're probably a little easier than human twins.
Maybe a little bit. But anyway, like, what was that you started to say, "Man, I need to do something different."
So one, I was dealing with a lot of anxiety at the time. Looking back at it now, I'm pretty sure that I had generalized anxiety probably since my mid to late 20s, but it really came to the forefront when I was postpartum. And I was diagnosed with postpartum anxiety at the time. And I realized like I wanted to be a good mom. And in order to do that, I needed to prioritize my mental health.
Yeah.
And so I do think that I got really serious about that, but also like I was going to work and I wasn't showing up the way that I wanted to. So sometimes I'll talk about we have our to-do list, but we also want to have a to-be list.
Yeah.
And I just wasn't I wasn't showing up the way that I knew that I could. And so I got serious about things, really.
Mhm.
I was like, "All right, we're going to treat this really seriously." And I was learning to be a partner, a wife in a completely different way.
Mhm.
And I also knew that my anxiety was probably hard on our relationship. And so I just got really intentional because I was like, you know what? This is really important to me. My marriage is important to me. How I show up as a parent is important to me. And I was just grumpy and snippy and I wasn't feeling fulfilled. And I think that one thing that's really important to me too is I don't want to raise my kids in a way that the moment that they have kids, they lose themselves completely. I want
Mhm.
my kids to be full, thriving humans their whole lives.
Right.
And so I was like, if I want my kids to do that, then I need to model for them a parent that still has a personal life and identity outside of being a parent.
Right. Right. I think that's really important.
Mhm.
Mhm. So what was your step? What was your step out?
At first, I wasn't sleeping because of anxiety and I was fighting it. And at one point I said, "You know what? We're just giving into this. We're just getting up and we're going to do something." And for me at that time, I had gotten really into planners. I had a student give a presentation on decorative planning as a way to deal with your anxiety. And basically, you just throw some stickers into a planner. And this is great because I don't have that great of artistic skills,
Okay.
but stickers you can make things pretty with.
Yeah.
And so here I was, it was like, 2:30 in the morning and I'm just like putting stickers in a planner and I'm like journaling. And as a way to clear my thoughts, I was praying. That's my faith is really important to me. So this was like a time for prayer and journaling. And at the same time, I was also managing my time.
Yeah.
I was thinking about, okay, if this is what I want to in my life and this is how I want to show up, what does this look like on my calendar?
Mhm.
How does this show up in a to-do list? And then how do I wake up the next morning and do it? And so really it just started by me creating a ritual and a practice around planning that allowed me to reflect and then really put those reflections into practice through like my calendar and
Yeah.
through my actions. And I really started there. And then from there, I was like, oh, wow, I'm like really experiencing a lot of benefits from this. And then I got super into goal setting. So I started reading a bajillion things on goal setting. And then from there, I was like, oh, I got to share this with other people because I'm a teacher. That's what I do.
Yeah.
And so I had put together a group of women. I called them the Goal Get 'em Girls. And I was like, hey, you just like want to come over and like put stickers on things and like reflect and do activities together. And so luckily I have great friends and we would get together once a month and we would take turns and it'd be like, okay, this month is financial goals. Like, what are your best hacks for, managing your finances? What apps do you use? What, like, just like, how have you all adulted?
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
would just share with each other. And we did this for a good year.
That's cool.
And we'd go to different people's houses and different people would take the lead. And I was like, oh, this is so fun. And then I was like, "Well, why don't I make a podcast on it?
Yeah.
Why don't I start sharing this with other people?" And I had developed like a goal planner that I was selling on Etsy. And I was like, "Okay, I'm just like I'm going to get on, I'm going to record myself and we're going to talk about this." And it kind of just exploded from there.
Wow. Were you
Mm.
nervous?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I didn't know how to edit. I had never used any editing software. The technology part of it was really tricky for me. I was nervous about sharing some of these things out into the world. You're like simultaneously nervous that no one will listen to you and also nervous that everyone will. And, so it felt very vulnerable.
Yeah. Do you think that vulnerability is the key to moving into your next season?
Absolutely.
And vulnerability, although it feels awful sometimes, right? I think that unless you get vulnerable with yourself, like, "Hey, this isn't working. My life is not working. It might look good, but it doesn't work." And you have to get almost desperate to make a change before
Mhm.
you make a change. I
Absolutely.
mean, you're not gonna make a change if you're kinda happy.
Well, and it's tender. I think that that's one of the things that I've really had to contend with because, like, now reflection and planning and goal setting, it feels really cozy to me. Like, it's an
Mhm.
act of self care. So, sitting down and having like my planner and my nice pen and my paper is such a cozy experience for me. But I remember when I first did it, I would all of a sudden realize something about myself and it wouldn't be great.
Mhm.
And it'd be like, oh crap, I gotta do something about that. Like, "Oh, Danielle, you're, like, snapping in the morning. That's not how you wanna be."
Yeah.
And, like, that's not fair to to your husband. And so, having those realizations about yourself can be incredibly tender and hard and not fun.
Mhm.
But believing that you have an ability to create change and do things differently and that your life could be more full because of that is wildly encouraging.
Uh-huh. I remember, this is what I've found in my world, and I think it's I just wanna see if it's similar. Like, I remember when Faith and Foster were probably about 1, maybe 1.5, and we were looking at expanding our business. I'm in the real estate business. We are looking at expanding it and building a new building, and I had a lot of mom guilt because I love what I do, right?
Mhm.
And I I thrive in that kind of environment. I like, "Oh, I love it. I'm good at it. This community has been great for me." But I was having mom guilt, like, "What am I gonna do?" And I'll never forget this. I went to, one of a mastermind, and this guy looked at me and he said, "Hey, do you know what the greatest" it wasn't to me personally, it was to the group at large, and it was, Ed Milet.
Oh, wow.
And he said, the greatest sin you could commit against your children is to tell them to chase their dreams, but you don't chase yours. Nothing seems more disingenuous than you telling them, "You chase your dreams, but I wasn't strong enough, brave enough, had the courage enough to chase mine, or I believed in the power of them." Right? And that took, like, mom guilt away from me. And I actually, this building that we're in right now, it came in, over budget from what I wanted, and I was like, maybe I should just back away from it." And my husband and I, we prayed about it and talked about it, and he said, "Amy, you're like, if you're not growing, you're dying." And I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "I think you'll be bored if we don't move forward." And I actually looked and we were sitting and having a conversation. I actually looked at Faith and I said, "I don't want Faith to be bound by a limitation. I want to show her a life that doesn't look like limitation." Right? And looking at that at my kids was the reason that I ultimately was the final straw to pull the trigger to, like, we have to. What we model for them is critical. I mean, this isn't a parenting thing, but just think about that, right? So I like the fact that you're like, "Yeah, I had to model what I wanted there," you know?
I think that one of the things that I notice so often working with my client is that it's so easy midlife to disassociate with yourself, to lose just a part of yourself. And it's weird because it's not like we don't know who we are, but also we don't.
Mhm,
And, it'll be so interesting. I'll ask people things that seem really simple, like, oh, what's something that you like to do for fun? It's like, what fun? I don't have time for fun, right? And you're like, well, what do you like though? If you
mhm.
did, what would you do? and you'll catch them reverting back to things that they did in their 20s.
Mhm.
And that doesn't mean that they don't still love those things. One of my friends was like, "Oh, I love to play volleyball." And she was like, "Wait, I haven't played volleyball in like a decade, maybe 2." And then she realized, "Oh, what I like to do now is bake.
Yeah.
I actually love baking." And yet, like, you've been doing it and you kind of know that you like baking, but like the story that you tell about yourself is like, "Oh, I'm a volleyball player."
Mhm.
But you've shifted, you've changed, you've evolved. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think it's so easy to lose touch with, well, what is the thing that brings you delight now?
Mhm.
I mean, even being able to recognize I don't really like rides. I like the joy that I see on my kids' faces while they experience the rides.
Right. Yeah, that's huge. Okay, tell me this. So, your first podcast,
Mhm.
are you making podcasts in the night? Are you in a studio? Like, did you makeshift studio in your house? Like, tell me like the
So I have a clawfus.
okay.
So
A what?
in a clawfus, it's a closet office,
Okay.
and we had an office upstairs that mostly was my husband's.
Okay.
I was like, "Oh, I don't need an office. Like, I'll be good." And then COVID happened and we were both working from home. And I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna move into this office. I'm gonna put a desk in there,
Yeah.
into this closet. Sorry. I'm gonna put a desk in this closet and I'm gonna work in there." And I was like, "This is perfect for podcasting."
Yeah, it's
So
cozy.
I'll just go in there and that's where I'll record. And so I was waking up around like 4 or 4:30 in the morning, and that's when I would do all my recording because everyone else in the house would be asleep, and that's my time. And so I'd be in this closet, and this is how I still do this. I'm in my closet and I'm recording. And my closet is like my happy place now. It's my office. Now I'm sort of like, "Oh, we could expand. I could move out into the actual office area, but
You don't want to.
I don't want to."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back to this. She was doing this at 4 or 4:30 in the morning.
Mm,
You're never gonna move anything forward in your life. You're never gonna launch out to a new adventure unless you're actually so committed to it that you'll pay a price and do something uncommon, right? That was
absolutely.
an uncommon action step that you took. Most people are not willing to take that. Most people won't get up at that time of the day to make it happen. Like, you understood, you had kids, and I have to think that your future self was probably thinking, "My future self will thank me for doing this." Like, there's something in my life that I'm compelled. I see a vision that I'm not living in that compels me to do this action step.
Something that I think I've really paid attention to is that when we're really overwhelmed and we're exhausted and we're tired, our response is often to go like, "Oh, I just need to lay on the couch. I need to, like, I don't know, binge Netflix," something like that. And then you do that, but you don't really feel rested afterwards. You still feel like flat and blah, and you definitely don't feel fulfilled. And what I've learned is that some of these things that we think are going to exhaust us, going for the big thing, the wild thing, the thing that makes us feel a little bit vulnerable, we think, "Oh, well, I don't have energy for this." But the truth is like that's the thing that fuels you.
Yeah, that's so good. It's true.
Mhm.
There's nothing like putting yourself out there and then people respond, both positive and negative.
Yes, yes, and then and
If
like you're shaking a little and it gives you a little bit of adrenaline and then you can feel awake at 4 in the morning.
I always tell my husband, I go, we did not sign up for the merry-go-round. We signed up for the roller coaster. The highs, the lows. We signed up for it. And I tell myself that often when I think, wow, why am I going through this? Or why do I even do this to myself? Or a lot of people can't relate to this. And then I'm like, no, I signed up for the roller coaster. I
Mhm.
don't want the merry-go-round. I don't want the scenery to look the same. So that involves risk. It involves challenge. It involves all of that. But I want to live like full out. And this is
Absolutely.
why when I see you, Danielle, I see you living full out.
I do my best.
You do. Like, I see you and I'm like, you're full energy, full bright, magnetic in your personality, and thinks super strategically. Like, her brain thinks very different than mine thinks. Like, I need, like, a transfusion of how you think. right? In my world. So I'm getting it, guys. I'm actually coaching with her. So, but literally, for you to do your step by step by step by my brain doesn't think like that.
It's so interesting because I've never thought of myself as a strategic thinker because I'm a creative. So my PhD is in this funky area called performance studies. And one of my jobs at the university is I run a small theater. And so like I write plays, I do all this hippity dippity stuff, especially like in academia when other people are doing this research that involves statistics and numbers and all this. And I'm like, I'm going to write a play and we're going to like bounce around a theater. And so I've never thought of myself as a strategic thinker. And yet, like this, to make a show go, for example, you have to be on such a tight deadline because
Yeah,
that audience is going to be there whether you're ready or not. And navigating that many people through a process does take a lot of organizational skills and thought and mapping it out. And my guess is that there's a lot of that you're doing too that's strategic in order for you to lead the teams that you do and to have grown the company that you have. And so for a long time, I didn't really think of myself as a strategic thinker. And even now, I almost think of myself as an intentional thinker more
mhm,
than a strategic thinker. Though, I do think that the skill of like, how do you break something down into different parts and reverse engineer it? It takes practice. And, I do think that that comes to some people a little bit easier than others.
mhm, yeah. I think it's powerful how what looks like a mountain, you break it down into bite size.
Well, and I think you're like this too. We're both very consistent people.
Mhm,
So if I decide that I'm going to do something,
mhm.
oh, I'm going to do a podcast and I'm going to release 2 episodes a week. I'm 2 years in and I don't think I've missed a week.
Yeah, it's amazing.
You just show up and you do it.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm proud of you for that.
I'm proud of me
I
too.
know
And I'm
it,
proud of you
it
for yours.
but it takes so much, like, behind the scenes work, thought. It's always on your brain.
Mm.
It's like another child, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It is like another child. It's like, "Oh, what's my content gonna be? What am I gonna think about? Oh, that's a good point." You're always bringing it into, "I'm gonna put this out there." What would you say to somebody who says, "I'm on the fence." Ho What was it that pushed you over? What is it that pushed you to go, "Okay, I'm gonna take the leap?" Like, what would you say to someone too, that's sitting in a comfort zone? You're in your comfort zone, miserably comfortable, right? The more I get into life, I always like comfort really is our enemy. It's not our friend. We seek it all the time, but it's actually not that good for us. And so, but for someone who's, maybe they're 35, 40 years old, they're in their zone, they're in their comfort zone, they've kind of got their world going, yet they know there's something. What would you say the next step for them to be? What would you tell them to do?
Well, the first thing that I would do is actually ask them, like, what's it costing you to stay the same?
Mhm,
What's the cost? What's at stake here if you don't do anything?
mhm.
If 1 year from now you haven't changed a darn thing and you're sitting on the couch still in your comfortable, miserable zone, like what then?
Yeah,
And to spend a little bit of time naming the cost of not making the change, because I think that so often we focus on the cost of changing
yeah.
and the fear of that and the vulnerability. Well, it scares the out of me to also not change these things that need changed.
I always tell everyone my greatest fear is that I get to my end of my days and I didn't give my all. I didn't try everything I wanted to try, and I didn't live in what I know I'm supposed to live in. That's like
Mhm.
my greatest fear. It's not that I played it safe. It's not that if I failed or didn't fail, it's that if I wouldn't have tried to do it and live to my potential.
Absolutely. And so, I love the quotation, wherever you go, whatever you do, do it with all your heart.
Yeah.
And, I hold that with me. And that sometimes can bite me. Like sometimes I get really attached to things that I need to like let loose of.
Mhm.
But for the most part, I think that that's a really important thing is, I want to give it my all. But what I would also say to someone is once you've named those costs, then I would ask them, what is the very first step for you making that change? I also think that having a practice of self-reflection is
Mhm,
one of the best things that you can do.
mhm.
And for me, my self-reflection and my planning practices are really tied together, and that's really helpful because not only do I get to reflect, but I get to manage my time too.
Yeah,
And so that's for me, planning is personal development.
yeah,
And whether that's something as simple as, having a prompt that you reflect on every single day, or just naming like, what's one thing I'm grateful for, or what's one thing that I'm so grateful that I did today, or one thing I'm proud of, or who do I want to be tomorrow? It can be small, it can be big, but, writing something down every single day that helps you kind of reflect, but then also to reflect forward. I know that
yeah,
sounds weird. I
yeah,
like to reflect forward, which is to think about like, what did I learn today that I can do tomorrow?
mhm. Yeah, it's powerful. Guys, do you think this is powerful? Here's the thing, you're gonna have the opportunity to hear Danielle. She's gonna be on the Action Takers panel. She drops, like, nuggets of gold and wisdom as you've, seen on this podcast, but go follow her podcast, Plan, Goal, Plan. You're gonna love it. Go download it, go subscribe to it. It's fantastic, and she will be with me January 11th, 2025, your year to thrive, right? So, give me one quick last sentiment.
Ooh, I would say, this is kind of my tagline, but it's be bold, be balanced, and be well.
Awesome. I love it. Remember this, you're on this earth for more, and you truly are more.